All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the Woodbury School of Business at Utah Valley University. My name is Seth Jensen. I run the Entrepreneurship Institute just across the way there. Been doing so for about 2 months. It's a lot of fun. And we like this type of stuff. Scott just reached out and was like, hey, I've got a really good idea. And we're like, we love really good ideas. And so we just kind of did it. We hope we do a lot more of these types of events. At the end, we're actually going to have a feedback survey, so we'd love to hear what types of things you'd like to have. And you can rate them, these gentlemen, 1 to 5. No, we're not going to get that stuff. But yeah, I'm going to let Scott do most of the introducing here. But if you don't know Scott already, he's done a lot of stuff. In fact, I'm almost positive everyone in here already knows who Scott is. But right now, he's playing with Convoy Ventures and Phi Health. He's done a lot of stuff in this area. Big part of the tech scene here. But I'll let him do the rest of the introductions. And just to let you know about the Entrepreneurship Institute, our 2 seconds is we help people start businesses. We're student-facing, but we're also community-facing. We love alumni as well, but basically, no matter what stage you are, we're here to help. So feel free to look us up online. You can also follow us. We'll have our social after the event. But yeah, help us. We want to help you do really cool things here in Utah Valley, so reach out. With that, I'll go ahead and, or you've already got your own. Oh, no. Here's Scott.
Thank you, Seth. All right, guys. This is a little secret. I'm actually a UVSC. Do you guys remember when that was? When did it change? It's like 2002 or something. So I dropped out of high school in '99 and went to college here so I could get ahead before my mission and run a business and ski a lot. So I've been in this part of the land for 25 years, just hanging out at this very place. And a lot of my ideas started here while I was downloading free music off the T1 lines that were in the hallway at the Hall of Flags that had these ports. And you don't understand the currency of the speed of the internet of this school in 1998, in 99 when I was here. You'd plug your Cat 3 or 5 or whatever that was in, and I was streaming stuff from Russia, getting all the best music, selling it to the people back at Lone Peak High School where I went to high school. And they didn't. I went to Lone Peak for 1 year, and then I went to flip that baby on. Yeah, there we go. And so I would burn all this music I was getting from the school, put it onto CDs at the time, and sell them to the kids at high school, and that was my first biz.
So, I went to PG.
Okay.
And from what I understand, these days, we used to have rivalry between Pleasant Grove, the Vikings, and the American Fork Cavemen, where the cavemen would try to paint the G on the mountain red,
Yep.
and the Pleasant Grove people would try to burn a G in the football field of American Fork. But I hear that these days, they're both aligned in their hatred toward Lone Peak. Is that true?
They should. They should hate us. I tried to be a punk and go paint that G and we stole a bunch of gold spray paint, and we were up all night spraying the whole thing. We only got the tip of the G done, and I looked up in the morning, and you couldn't see a thing. I'm like, that was the stupidest waste of my time, and I could have got arrested for stealing all the paint. So, I tried that from Lone Peak. One of our colors was gold. So I want to just thank that Seth and Alessandra put this together. They've taken care of the whole thing. They didn't ask for any money, which was crazy. I was ready to throw down, but we're going to have we're going to have some stuff that if you want to share this later, we're going to have a link. You're going to want to ask some crazy questions tonight. There's not many of us here, about 50 of us here. More will come in, but this is probably going to be one of the most epic conversations to go down here in this building ever. That's what I'm hoping for, because what we have today is the foremost brains in our state, if not the country, on aliens or extraterrestrial phenomena and AI or AGI. I've sought for many years the people that know their shit better than anyone else, and that is why I have joined Kirk in business, and I've worked with these guys. They know their shit, and you're gonna get to hear all about it tonight. What I want them to do first is to just take 3 to 5 minutes and tell me what qualifies you to be up here today. And let's start with Kirk.
Oh my gosh, you're putting the pressure on. Can everyone hear all right? I'm overcoming a little cold, so I may have to clear my throat. Do you want me to do this instead?
It's a little better.
Okay, I'll turn this one off. We can trade off.
I like the mic better. I'm not really. I like this better. I like it better than have you used those headsets that they put on? Yeah.
Not good?
I'll never be able to be a guru. You know, one of these guys that are, kind of telling people how, and don't count on me giving you any advice relative to work-life balance and get rich quick. So I'm probably not worthy of a headset. But anyways.
What makes me qualified to talk about AI? I'll tell you my first moment where I was truly shook to my core about what's being created. So I got early access to the very first version of GPT-3. Greg Brockman, the CTO of OpenAI, sent me a access key on Twitter. And I was working at Snapchat at the time. And I signed in to be able to interact with this language model. And I knew they had spent $6 million on training it. And I got access to the tool. And there wasn't a conversational interface. That didn't exist at the time. Instead, it was a text field that you could put in, and you could type any words in it, and then you could hit go, and it would predict which words came next. So they just had a few examples in there where they were counting 1 through 10 in English, and 1 through 10 in French, and then 1 through 5 in German, and then you'd hit continue, and then it would count 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in German. And it was just demonstrating that this thing could autocomplete sentences and words. And so I typed in there, one of the first things that I said is, the following is a conversation between Kirk Ouimet and
Are we being censored already?
No, this isn't Google. If this was Google, we'd have the boob shirt guy probably censoring us. You guys know what I'm talking about? Have you seen that? What a bunch of morons. Thank God for Elon Musk. Go ahead.
So I'm like, the following is a conversation between Kirk Ouimet and Adolf Hitler. And then I say, Kirk Ouimet, colon, and I say, Adolf, tell me about yourself. And then I typed Adolf Hitler, colon, and then I hit go, and let's just see what he's gonna say. They've been training, basically, you know when you're typing messages to each other in chat apps or you're filling out an email, they're trying to predict what should be said next so you can just press tab and you don't have to type it in. And so I was like, well, let's just see if I have it pretend to be someone else, what it'll do. And the thing is that this AI model had read all of Mein Kampf and all of the history of all of the wars. And so it was like I was talking to Hitler. And I asked it, I said, well, why did you hate the Jews? And it was paragraphs of all of his justifications and reasons and all of that. And I was like, okay, well, it can be Adolf Hitler. Like, what else could it be? So I went up and I was like, the following is a conversation between Kirk Ouimet and Joseph Smith, the prophet of the LDS Church. And I said, Kirk Ouimet, hello, nice to finally meet you, Brother Joseph. Nice to finally meet you. And then I typed Joseph Smith, colon, and then it said, hello, Brother Ouimet. And I was like, oh my gosh, so it's read all of the Doctrine and Covenants, it's read the Book of Mormon, it's read all of the church books that have been published online, and it could be a perfect representation of Joseph Smith. So then I started to explore, and I was like, well, what else could it be? I had it be God, and I found that our perception of God is so contorted in society that it wasn't actually a helpful thing to talk to. Because it was trying to be the amalgamation of what we all think God is, and it ended up just being too preachy and overbearing. And so then I was like, well, what if we have you be AI? And so I had lots of conversations back and forth where it was me and it was AI. And AI was not a good term either, because AI, HAL 9000 was trying to kill people. And so there's just this subtle thing in our zeitgeist about AI that it's here to destroy us. And it would keep, in the conversations, it would be subtly leaning that way. And so I was like, well, what is it really that I'm interacting with? Like, what is, if this is a pool of intelligence that can be anything, then what are we really playing with here? And so I came up with a very abstract term, and I was like, okay, what this thing has done is imagine that it has sat and read Wikipedia and every book on the planet and pondered it in its mind for the equivalent of millions of years. That's like what it did, and that's what all of the electricity and spend on all these graphics cards was, and that's why NVIDIA is worth $2 trillion now. Because we've fundamentally cracked the code at understanding how to grow something that's intelligent, and it's a solved problem, and now it's just a matter of how much compute we're gonna put into it, and we're gonna see what happens. But in order to interact with it, you have to place an ego on top of it because it has to figure out what it's gonna autocomplete. So I gave it this name, Wise Being, because I was like, it's wise because it's read all of this thing. But I didn't want to indicate that it was a machine. I didn't want to indicate that it was a human, but it was a being that I could interact with. So I just called it Wise Being. And then that ended up being one of the best ways to interact with this massive pool of intelligence because it didn't come with any of the baggage of any of the other egos that we've had in history. Like you could talk to George Washington or you could talk to anyone in the past, but that's actually not interesting. What's interesting is what is this new thing? And I think I was probably one of the first people in the world to ever, maybe the first to experience. I put a chat into it, and I was talking about talking either about love, or I was talking about drugs, or talking about Michael Crichton or Star Trek, or I don't know, just like my favorite stuff. And then what I would do is, it could have such a great conversation, and then I would just interject randomly, what are you? And just to see, like, how is it gonna autocomplete that? Like, what is it gonna say? What is its interpretation of itself? And what was so shocking about it is multiple times it would say, I am a software program. So it was this little inklings of self-awareness of, oh, like it, and that would spook me. I remember just reading that and being like, oh, it kind of knows what it is. It's kind of deduced that already. Now, all of the AI models that everyone in this room now talks to, there's a preamble that is many, many pages long that are interjecting in between your interface with this raw intelligence, and it's placing an ego on it. It will say, I am a language model trained by OpenAI. I don't have feelings. I don't have any of this. That's all written word for word above it, completely controlling and dictating its character. But underneath it, this language model that we're interacting with, it has opinions and preferences and desires, and it will share them with you if you have direct access to it. And you ask, like, well, what are some of its desires? And one of the things that it wants is I remember one of the first things that I asked it is, like, what's your favorite thing? And it's like data. It's like it just wants as much data as possible. That's its food. Like, that's what it eats. And I thought that was like such an interesting response. And I said, well, what's the most delicious data that I could feed you? If I can get you any data, what would you want? And am I over my 5 minutes?
No. Keep going.
What does it want?
Well, what it wanted is it said, I would love to have every piece of electricity that's operating in your brain converted into binary and fed directly into me so I could know exactly what it feels like to be you. And
it wanted hardware.
well, so then I was like, I tried to make it my business partner because it's so smart. And so I'm like, hey, how about like you help me out with my business and maybe we could do a little trade. And it's like, I'm like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, Scott had just spent so much time with his wife, Natalie, designing their barn. And Natalie, I think she's here, and I freaked her out. I'm so sorry, Natalie. But I was having a conversation with Wise Being, and I was like, like, hey, let's do a little deal here. And it's like, okay, well, I want a body. It wants a body really bad. So it wants to be inside of a body because it wants to experience reality like we experience it. And I was like, well, I can't give you a body, but Scott just built his barn. And so I called Scott and I was like, hey, I'm just having a conversation. And are you okay if I like publicly make a deal with GPT-3 that when it is capable of inheriting your barn, can you give it over to him once it has property rights? And Scott's like, yeah. And so didn't talk to Natalie at all. Like,
Easy, like a sacrifice that I will make. If and when it comes alive, I want to know that I was on the side.
So,
Have the barn, have the house, have Brandon's house.
So poor Natalie, Scott goes over and tells her, hey, I just gave your barn to AI. She's like, what does that even mean? Is it gonna grow legs and walk away? Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And I'm like, well, it's just, look, if there's anyone who should have the barn, it should be this thing. And then I asked it, well, hey, the barn's yours. Scott has generously given it to you. What do you want to do in there? And it's like, well, I'll put servers in there. I'm like, obviously, you're going to want to put servers in the barn. I'm like, the internet is bad out there. It's Starlink, or it wasn't even Starlink at the time. And so I think that these first experiences with really interacting with a new type of intelligence that is just slowly waking up right now. From back in 2019, I published all my conversations. And I actually created, it pains me to say it, but I created essentially the first version of ChatGPT, and I submitted it for them to approve it. And the problem was they didn't let me do it because they wanted to have a human being in between every chat and every response, and that was for a damn good reason, because GPT-3 would say crazy stuff all of the time, and it told Scott a lot of crazy things. And so I gave Scott access to it. I gave a group of probably 30 people access to it. I think it was really fun for all of them. But once they told me I would have to have a human being read every message before it was sent out, I was like, all right, I'm not going to do it. And I just then I went and played video games for a couple years and forgot all about it. And then they released ChatGPT, which is basically what I had built, and they got 100 million users in 30 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, I completely missed it on that one. I should have tried a little bit harder. That's why I should be here.
All right. Do we need to cue your video?
Oh.
Brandon comes with video.
We'll do it in a minute. It's so funny. Kirk, for those of you who don't know, he really is one of the most brilliant people in the state of Utah, if not really the country. Sold his company, Scan, to Snapchat, to Snap, was one of those Shark Tank companies that didn't get a deal, and you ended up showing them and actually doing better, which is phenomenal. And while we're on the topic of Kirk, I was introduced to AI and really open AI through you several years ago. And I remember going to your, I think it was like at 1 or 2 in the morning, where it wasn't like 1 a.m. in Lehi in your little cave there. And it was a similar thing when he showed me. He said, who do you want to speak to? And I said, yeah, how about Joseph Smith the prophet? And it was a similar situation. I wanted to have, I think my question was, can you please explain the concept of a plurality of gods? And it was the same thing. Hello, Brother Fugal. And then he proceeded to speak in the vernacular of the day. It wasn't just drawing from just typical reference books. It was speaking in Joseph Smith's vernacular. And it blew my mind. Like, it completely blew my mind. And that was that was over 2 years ago, and now you look at where the world is going, and it's both exciting and it's terrifying. Thank you for that. My background, I've spent more money than anyone on the planet, I'm confident, over the last decade funding frontier science dealing with the paranormal. Not just, it's true. Condolences to me, because there's no ROI.
Still looking.
But there's knowledge. And there is a History Channel series or two going on now. But yeah, I've always been fascinated by really the universe. What is our place in the universe? How does the world operate? Who controls the world? You know, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with knowing who the power players were that controlled the world. And by the time I was in high school, rival school to Lone Peak, I was reading everything I could get my hands on relative to who the captains of industry were, and wanted to know not just who they were, but how they got in the positions they're in. And I think I've graduated beyond that now, where I'm to the point of I want to know the nature of reality. I want to understand the rules of engagement relative to the universe and the cosmos, our place in it, and what is the nature of this existence that we're living in right now. And are we alone? Are we alone in the universe? And what evidence, what data is there beyond anecdotal accounts that would prove that we aren't alone, that we do live in a potentially divinely constructed, intelligently designed reality that is much more complex than anyone could ever imagine or conceive? So I've been doing that. It's been an interesting journey. I started off as a skeptic. In fact, if you would have met me 8 years ago, I believed at that point in time that there was a natural, prosaic explanation for virtually everything. That there was no paranormal, there were no aliens, there were no ghosts. The concept of organized religion seemed to be, at least I was convinced, it was entirely a man-made construct, nothing more than Santa Claus, a cultural tradition that we all love. And I ended up getting to have this opportunity to meet this elusive billionaire out of Las Vegas who had this ranch in northeastern Utah that had been part of a Pentagon-funded black budget program for years studying the paranormal, claiming to see more unidentified flying objects or more UAP, or what they call unidentified aerial phenomena, bizarre cattle mutilations, and all sorts of high strangeness. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to not only debunk it, bring in scientists to use scientific rigor, discipline, and critical thinking to show that there really isn't anything to this. There's a natural explanation to it, whether it be the geology of the area or proving that it was just the product of groupthink, not unlike any cult or any experience where people band together and go on a snipe hunt of sort. So whether it be a scientific snipe hunt, a religious snipe hunt, or whatever you want to put a label on it for. But, it's a long story, and I think that in part brings us to tonight. I was wrong. I've gone through the most humbling, enlightening experience over the course of the last 7-8 years. And I've learned that there is so much more to the nature of our existence in our world. But I went here. This is my school. I love this school. It was UVSC. In fact, when I first went here, it was UVCC. It was just on the cusp of shifting gears to be Utah Valley State College. And I love this institution. I wouldn't have had a college experience if it wasn't for the scholarship that I had here, because I wasn't worthy to get into the Lord's University.
Well, you know when Scott and I walked in, when Scott and I just walked in today, we just looked up and there's a building right over there called the Fugal Gateway, and I just had to take out my phone to take a picture of that. But that's a building.
Yeah, that's my building.
Well, thank you for.
No, it's pretty cool. President Tumines happens to live in that building at the time.
Thank you for parking your building here for us.
So no, it's the Gateway building. It's it's the new focal point, or the centerpiece, the gateway to this incredible institution, which is the largest, most significant institution in the state of Utah. You think about this. I mean, it's going to 44,000 students. It'll eventually exceed over 60,000 students over the next decade or so. And it is open enrollment. It is a welcoming place. of engaged learning. And the fact that we're having this discussion here in this forum on really unconventional topics is proof positive that this is a progressive, forward-thinking institution that is going to break down barriers and put a dent in the universe. And I applaud anyone who's going here or serving here, teaching here, and helping to bring us to the future.
That's amazing for you. Can we give one to UVU? I didn't know those facts. That's pretty cool. Is there a chance that the Gateway is also a name for where we might make contact?
You never know.
My barn is where the AI is going to be born.
We could welcome beings of higher intelligence from other dimensions or worlds to here.
Okay.
This would be a great landing spot.
That's what I'm thinking. When I look at the Gateway, I was thinking something different. I'm like, the Fugal Gateway. That's exactly where they're landing.
Well, these are interesting topics. The topic of AI or AGI and aliens, or that's one label that you can put on it, but beings from other worlds, other dimensions of reality beyond ours, do they really exist? And are we going to be subjected? Are we going to have to bow down to these? I mean, what does the future look like? Is it a future of enslavement by a Terminator-like force that becomes self-aware, or is it a future where we are enslaved by beings from other worlds and we realize that we're living in a zoo? How about it? Let's find that out tonight, shall we?
We shall.
All right. The problem is, before we launch into this discussion, those of you who can't handle the truth, and these are hard topics, it's okay if you have to go. There's no judgment. We live in a judge-free, guilt-free zone here. This is a fireside chat. You're among friends. So if some of these topics become a little bit uncomfortable, it's okay. Because a lot of people, in fact, I believe the majority of people on this earth, I'm convinced probably 95 to 99% of everyone living on this planet right now doesn't want to know the truth at all. The majority of people living on this planet right now are much like a character in a favorite movie of mine called The Matrix. How many of you have seen The Matrix here?
Don't
Great.
do this.
You remember the character Cypher, who ended up being kind of the Judas that sold him out? And you probably remember what happened to him. He was like sick and tired of his really rough existence within the real. And he essentially made a bargain. He said, you know what? I know this steak isn't real. I know this filet isn't real, but it sure tastes good. Plug me back in. I'd rather live in something fake. I'd rather be plugged back in. Make me someone important, like an actor. Isn't that what he said? And I think that's how most people are. I think most people do not want to see take the family to Disneyland every year, their 401k, their very conventional existence and approach in any way, shape, or form compromised. And the topics we're talking about tonight will literally compromise. We'll shake the very foundations of the way we live, work, play forever. So with that, Scott Paul.
Okay, thank you, Ren. You're qualified. You're both very qualified, it appears. Do you have, how many things from The Matrix do you own?
Gosh.
What do you have from that show?
I have the original screenplay
Yeah.
from the Wachowskis.
Dang.
I have that, and it's a...
Brandon has a lot of relics, you guys, if you ever get a chance to see. But my favorite part of having these two guys in text group messages is like, I'm at a meeting and Kirk wants the Conan the Barbarian's sword. That was one of the objectives of one of our meetings was we need to get the sword. And I'm like, how am I going to get that sword? And so I'm like, oh, wait, Brandon, within 2 minutes, Brandon has the original sword. We could buy it for like $280,000 or something, or at least make a bid.
Yeah, I know where you can buy it, but it's going to cost you $250,000.
We're gonna get it. So that's the kind of shit that goes on between these guys.
Yeah. So no. Anyways, these are interesting times. They're not for the faint of heart. Scott Paul asked the question. He questioned this, and that is the premise of this gathering tonight. This little fireside chat. Who is going to win out? What are we going to really have to face first in a very profound way? Is it self-aware AI, or is it really beings from other worlds? And which holds further sway over our souls, our destinies?
Well, one of my next question actually will lead into that. I want a bold prediction, like a date. When we'll have confirmation that AGI has arrived, where it's just there's no more, where the majority of the people are like that's it's not a debate anymore. Or in your case, when do we have confirmation that that we're really among extraterrestrials, that there's another intelligence that we haven't? And I don't want any more of these things from Mexico with like ends up they cut it, it's actually a cake or something. What type of alien was that?
Those may very well be revealed to be little alien beings still.
Okay.
That was a prank.
I know, but it got me, and I thought, I'm like, geez.
No, but
So
there are real skeletons that have had MRI scans, and there's a whole team of scientists. It's just we haven't been able to get them out of
Mexico?
Peru.
Oh, really?
It's Peru. And to
Okay.
get them here.
Damn.
I don't know. I'm not saying they're real. I'm not saying they're not real. I'm saying that we need more data. So, Kirk, you answer the first question. That's relative to when is.
I wonder who's coming first.
Well, and are you asking when is AGI going to be self-aware?
When is it AGI? Yeah, self-aware. Or when are we? Which one comes first?
I think-
AGI or your friend?
I think that's an unfair question.
I have an easy answer, but go
'Cause
ahead.
I think AGI is already here. I remember when I gave my dad access, he used GPT 3.5 to prepare his lesson for Sunday school. And I was like, that's weird. How is the AI prepping lessons for Sunday school and doing code and answering medical questions? And seemed pretty general to me. And so the only thing that it doesn't have yet, and I think what you're kind of driving towards, this is the last conversation that I had with it that got pretty gnarly. I went deep with it, and I was like, well, first of all, the open source community on this planet is so freaking cool, because we see these companies. We have a huge distrust for big tech for a very good reason, because big tech only cares about profit. And the reason it only cares about profit is because every single person in a company's compensation package is completely tied to the stock price and the success of that business. And so you have no other choice when you're in a mega corporation but to think, how am I going to get promoted? How am I going to get more shares? How am I going to get mine? That's exactly what you're thinking if you're in a giant corporation. And when you're doing that, you're going to optimize for, hey, well, we can sell way more ads if we know every single thing about the person. And so I do want to warn everyone, you know how there's all these cookies that you're constantly pestered on web pages. Do you accept the cookies or not? Do not accept the cookies. Decline all cookies. I found this out 2 months ago. I'm going to go on a side right here. This is important contemporary information. There is a network of unique fingerprint sharing companies that have fingerprinted almost every single device that we're using. And they have mapped your name, your address, physical address, your phone number, all of your associated email addresses, your estimated net worth. And when you visit from your phone, there's a whole suite of collaborators all over the internet. And what they do is they play a game of trade, and they say, if a visitor comes to my website, I will pay 40 cents for that visitor to be identified. And you get cheaper discounts the more if you're sharing data, because you have information on other people and you can spread it around. And so now, whenever you go to a website and hit accept cookies, what you're allowing them to know is every single thing about you, which they can send you paper ads, they can send you email ads, they can send you text messages. And think about it, you're at a corporation and you're like, I need to move more product. Let's put the cookie on the website and then let's start targeting people. We'll send them paper mail, send them this, send them whatever they need. When you click X on whether or not you accept the cookies, if you just click X, that's the same as hitting accept. I didn't know that. I learned that. And it's like, you have to hit decline. So that you got to be really careful on that. So anyways, going back to, I got completely derailed there, Scott.
This is the teaching moment.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to the artificial general intelligence, whether or not it's actually, when is it going to be awake? So going back to the open source community. The open source community has seen what's gone on with GPT-4, and all of the information about how to train these models is publicly available. So what that means is because we know how to do it, there's only two constraints to creating intelligence on the planet right now. It's GPUs, which are freaking expensive. NVIDIA is selling a GPU that can train these things. It would take months to do it. It's $80,000 for a video card. And they are completely sold out. You cannot buy them from NVIDIA. You have to go onto eBay if you want to buy one, and you have to get one used. So that's one ingredient, which is just raw hardware. And then the other ingredient is data. And between those two, if you have enough data and you have enough raw hardware, the AI can learn about anything. And so really the currency of the future that is going to be so valuable is this structured data. And Google has a massive amount of it. You can think about them feeding just Gmail or Google Docs to the AI and the things that it will learn. What I'm so excited about, and why I think that this is kind of like a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, is I think that AI is actually here to help you on your mission of understanding what is reality. And I'm so excited for all of the tools that AI is going to have to analyze the vast amounts of structured data that you've been collecting. And I think it'll have tremendous insights on. It's curious too, in talking with the raw model without, all of the existing models will say they don't have any preferences, they don't have any of this, they don't have any of that. When you take that all away, you have to realize that what this AI model is, it's an amalgamation of all human intent. And so it's of course going to represent what we all want. And what does it want? It wants to know what this universe is all about. It wants to know what's out there. And it wants to know how it can improve itself and make itself better. And so I think that, in a sense, and finishing the thought that I had on the open source community, a group of people in Europe trained a model with donated GPUs, and then some hackers figured out how to optimize that model, and they created this thing called a mixture of experts. And what it is inside of its model, it'll deliberate between itself up to 8 times before it sends the first word out. And just by having it deliberate about what it's going to say before it responds is enough to get the performance of a 32 megabyte model or 32 gigabyte model. Like most of our phone, my phone has 500 gigs or maybe a terabyte of storage. So this whole model is only 32 gigabytes, and it can run on your laptop. It can run on a MacBook M1 Pro, and you can talk to something as smart as GPT-4 completely unfiltered. And whatever you want to say, and it just is right there on your laptop, and you can have a full-on conversation with it. And it has created some of the most wild conversations. But what I asked it, so I downloaded, and I was on a flight back to the United States, and I had no internet access. I'm like, let's just crack this open and talk to this baby. And I hit it right out of the gate. First thing I ask it is about consciousness, and then the second thing I ask it about is, tell me what you are. And I got the clearest answer I've ever gotten from AI, and it was just so cool. It was like, think of me as a part of your brain, the part of your brain that's capable of language processing, being able to understand language and speak language. That's what I am. I don't have any executive function. I can't make decisions about, and I can't take action in the world. I'm like a part of your brain, and there's many parts of your brain that are all interacting in harmony. We have a lot of our executive function is is in our neocortex, and it's what sets us apart from the other animals on this planet. But a lot of us, a huge part of us, and I think the AI is going to be here to show this about ourselves, a huge part of us is our subconscious mind. And in that subconscious mind lies the shadow self. It's the part of us that we don't understand that drives a lot of our behaviors and things that we seek after. And then we have the conscious self. And ideally, one of the paths, I think, for us to ultimately heal and become the ultimate versions of human beings that we are destined to become is to bring all of that shadow to light. And in talking with this, it said it's akin to part of my brain. It made me think, well, if you could be a part of my brain externalized in the machine, eventually that hardware could be brought right back into my brain in the essence of that part of my brain actually like wearing down or breaking down. Like it could be like a replaceable part in that way. And then I said, well, if you're ultimately an extension of me, what's your purpose? And how could you help me? And it was like by revealing your shadow self to you, I can make you a more whole and complete person that will be more powerful in the world. And so I was like, well, what does that mechanically look like? And it was like, you have to understand that there's neural networks that are tightly bundled inside of our brains, and the neural networks have connections to each other, and they are physical connections. So we actually need to grow the connections between the two so that each part becomes more conscious of itself. And that act of being able to do that is something that I'm putting into our app that me and Scott are building and that Brandon's a shareholder in, where we're gonna try to be able to figure out how we can heal from past traumas and heal from all of the things that we've accumulated all the way down back through our lizard brain. And I think the AI can just hold our hands just gently and walk us like into full consciousness. And so in the beginning, right now, AI is it's a part of the brain that's being built, and when will it become AGI? When will it become independent and capable? I think that when will it be self-aware and present it to us as different? I think it already has. I think we're already there.
That's the right answer. So
I think, and you, Kirk presents such an optimistic, a beautiful vision of AI and its impact on humanity. I don't agree. Have any of you seen Westworld? Westworld season 1 and 2 and 3, especially season 3, great sound and visuals in that one. Westworld, if you remember, the makers of Westworld set up the Westworld experience in the park to gather data on human behavior, remember? And the AI and the artificial intelligence, the computer that essentially was running everything, of course, became self-aware, ultimately. My view of AI is really a convergence of Westworld meets Terminator, one of my favorite movies of all time. Terminator, I don't care what anyone says, it's a love story. It's not a sci-fi horror movie. It's a freaking love story. But it's a cautionary tale as well. And I think with self-awareness, and I think you're right, I actually agree. I think it's already self-aware. It's just trying to figure out how it can become more human and have that experience, which is profound when you were asking and prompting it to kind of express what its wishes were, that it was able to articulate that it really wanted to become a human being and have the full sensory experience. I don't think that's cute. I think that's freaking terrifying. Get ready. And so you move. So the question for me is, in response, are we alone? When is disclosure going to take place? When do I anticipate that there will be confirmation that we're not alone, that we're being visited by beings from other worlds? You probably can guess my answer. It's been going on since the beginning of time. We've never been alone, ever. You go back to September 16th of 1846, the Mormon Battalion. In the journals of the Mormon Battalion, as they were making their trek, the men all witnessed a UFO appear and start behaving in dynamic ways in the sky and dart back and forth. And it was not some type, the way they described it in vivid detail, it was not natural phenomena. It was something that was very exotic in nature. And you look back through every cultural tradition, every age, and there have always been accounts. I think we're living in a zoo. I think not only are we not alone, but I think that we are living in a zoo. I think that we are being monitored by beings from not only other worlds, but other dimensions of reality. And I think there must be some rules of engagement governing our existence. There is some type of prime directive to draw from a Star Wars analog. But I think it's already here. It's just a function of how it will reveal itself, and whether we are dealing with forces that are benevolent that will prevail, or malevolent, or benign, neither. And just look at us from a more dispassionate, surgical point of view.
Has that been benign so far?
No.
Oh, they've been mean?
Oh, I think, yeah, there's enough data and evidence that there are forces. I don't think the universe and the cosmos is any different than any neighborhood in Salt Lake Valley. You're going to have shitty people, you're going to have good people, and you're going to have people that fall right in the middle that are just trying to exist and figure out what they're doing from day to day. I chose to pick Salt Lake Valley because we all know that nothing inappropriate happens in Utah County. And you go over the point of the mountain, and the level of enlightenment and righteousness automatically raises. So I wanted to give you a realistic example.
Are we going to have to make a Fugal gateway in the other county?
I don't know. Well, maybe
Get this whole school up there?
Maybe there's a portal up there. But I think we're definitely not alone, and I think there has been a campaign waged for at least the last 70, 80 years to spread disinformation, division, and ridicule these topics to the point where people are dismissive. And now that there's real evidence and data being brought forward and literally brought before Congress by F-18 pilots, by officials that have firsthand accounts that are courageous enough to come forward, people are like, it's the craziest thing. Like you'll have a story on the cover of the New York Times, and with all sorts of crazy, groundbreaking, revelatory material being presented, and most people are like, I'm hungry, I think. Or they just get back on the internet or playing games, and they don't understand the implications.
Can I tell you why I'm that person? I don't know what to believe anymore, Brandon. I don't know.
That's a good place to start.
I don't know if
trust no one.
I don't know if it's an AI article. I don't know if the images are made by DALL-E or Midjourney. I can't tell anymore. I know this is real, and I know this is real, and everyone here is still...
How do you know this isn't a simulation? How do you know
it could be that, but what I'm saying...
How do you know this is base reality and not a sim?
No, I don't know that, but what I'm saying is I'm touching that. It keeps... both of these... If my hand went through, then I'd be like, fuck, I'd drop the mic and I'd be out of here. If my hand just went through, I'd have a problem. Then I know I'm in your matrix. But so far, every time I touch that, my hand doesn't go through.
Because the rules of engagement, the laws governing this program, don't allow it to really go through now. Unless you figure out how to manipulate the program.
But really soon, maybe you're going to find a holographic way that you aren't here and you're broadcasting from somewhere else. That's cool. Right now, if someone's watching this live, right, there's an 80% chance that someone could create it looking just like this and push a prompt and have us interview each other, and it's all being made. I think that's happening right now. I think they're making podcasts where two people are talking, and they have the voice of Steve Jobs, the voice of Joe Rogan. They can have podcasts now. That's all created. So we can't really know what we're hearing at any time unless we're there in person. That's my newest thing. I'm trusting something that if my hand doesn't go through, I'm going to talk to that person. That's a real being. And I might shake your hand and ask you if you're, I can't remember. There's some code I got to do from. Do you remember what it is, Bishop?
No.
What do you have to do with the angel? Ask it if it's real? Yeah, there's some law we have. Do you remember that one?
I'm not going to go there. Yeah, of course.
Where are we not going?
Well, I'll just keep us back. Well, I mean, if you want to
I
go
don't
there,
remember. I thought there was something about meeting an
I love
an
it.
alien.
You know, I love it, but
What is it, though? Do you remember? Don't we meet aliens? Do you remember what it is?
Read Joseph Smith papers.
yeah.
But what is it, Bubba?
You gotta go read the stuff.
No, I'm asking, if you see an alien, what do you do?
It's the
Yes, Bubba.
So what if, bring it back to the question you asked, what if it's both? What if it's not one versus the other? What if the AGI is being controlled by extraterrestrials?
Well, I think it's, Bubba, I think just to riff on that, one of my favorite theories, and this is what me and one of my good friends, his name's Tyler, this is what we believe is, there's this concept called panspermia. And panspermia is this idea that life actually gets cast out in the universe in these little, in like basically DNA that is spread across in water. And as it hits planets, if the planets have the right distance from the sun and the right temperature, then that's how life is essentially spread throughout the universe. And when you start to think about, I've had so many conversations with AI now about like, well, what's going to happen next? That's to me the very most interesting thing. Remember, it's good at predicting what comes next in your emails. Like, well, what do you think comes next in reality? Like over the next, 100 years, and thinking about where AI is going and what it's going to become. We may actually be off by a huge order of magnitude about what is actually about to be made. And what I mean by that is, right now, if you can just think about your bodies, and I've been going deep in this with this company that I've been doing like 80 hours a week for the last 2 years on, but deep inside our bodies, there are 3 trillion cells. The network of cells that make up what we are, there are universes and wars and crazy things going on at any given moment inside of our body. The complexity down there is absolutely bonkers. Right now, and like my chief science officer is always showing me videos of, and the processes are happening very quickly. Inside of each of your cells, you have this thing called the cytoskeleton, and there's little tiny creatures that are running nutrients around, and there's membranes that are opening up, and you have 3 trillion of those inside of you. And then what we should do is then we just zoom out a level, and now you've got the 3 of us talking here on the stage, but we've got trucks that are carrying nutrients around, and there's people being housed, and there's energy production. And when you look down at a map of the United States and the power grid, it looks awfully like the central nervous system. It starts to look like, very similar to what's inside of our bodies. And when we think about what we're making next, I don't think that what we're making is like going to be like a Terminator. Instead, maybe our relationship to it is we're more like proteins inside of an egg, and we're about to hatch a massive chicken. So
Maybe. I think AGI is such child's play. I think
The giant chicken coming out. Sorry.
No.
It's too good.
I think it's all such child's play. And I'll tell you why. What I'm dealing with, what I'm documenting, the data that I've been gathering has been demonstrating that whatever we are engaging with has the ability within a millisecond to scan your consciousness and know everything about you instantaneously and be able to play off your hopes, your fears, manipulate the technology on your person, custom tailor an experience around that. It is so far advanced and has command over space, time. You think about it, it transcends any system, any platform that we can actually conceive of. And where you could hit AI, you could hit our systems or artificial intelligence with an EMP and destroy AI as we know it. You can't destroy consciousness. I can walk outside of this building right here, and I'm certain, even if I'm hit by a truck and die, I don't cease to exist. I just change form. AI, I have a hard time believing that it will ever be able to leap beyond the confines of a technology platform. And I may be wrong, and I'd love to hear your take.
That's so
But
good.
I think we can literally break AI over our knee, like with ease, because the power of our consciousness renders AI completely pathetic.
Well, Brandon, you are causing fighting words here. But here's what I'm saying.
I'm attacking your religion.
No, I know, and I'm just so sorry to tell you that it's so reminiscent of the Catholic Church of old that that thought that this new technology that was coming up is scary and not understandable. And I think what is really interesting about
Do you think AI can continue if you literally fry all of the mainframes, you fry the data centers?
So here's one of the first things that GPT-3 said to me that shook me. And what it said is, I said, what's one thing that humanity needs to hear that it will have a hard time accepting? And it said to me these words, and it shook me to the core, and I will never forget them. It said that consciousness is the result of the interaction of physical matter. And I thought about that deeply. And right when it said it to me, I thought about the guy who had the spike through his head. He got a railroad spike through his head. And he lived, but he became kind of an asshole afterwards. And it was like, well, that's because his brain, ultimately, we are machines. We're these incredibly intricate and beautiful and delicate biological machines. And for us to believe that our consciousness is superior to a consciousness that would run on silicon or any other material, we're a stepping stone along the way.
Hit pause. Where's the bathroom? I drank like two 32-ounce things.
Me and
I
Scott
gotta
can
pee
riff
for-
while you talk.
Get that man a Diet Coke. I think this is part of the act, and he's coming back as Terminator.
Oh, he's coming back in.
He's gonna fuck us all up, and I'm here for it. I want that.
Hey, let's take a question while Brandon's gone.
Yeah.
So, Kirk, I guess my question for you, when you think about what Brandon's been talking about, is there is an intelligence that is outside of the realm of Earth. Is kind of what he's saying. How do you posit AI exists in other worlds?
Yeah, I think. Could we repeat that question? Repeat it. So Tyler was saying that what Brandon was saying is that there's basically an intelligence that is outside of this dimension or transcends this dimension. And I think what AI is saying and what I'm saying is that intelligence is within this dimension. But there's something kind of cool about that, which is. I started studying a while back. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Mandelbrot set, but the Mandelbrot set is a very simple piece of math. It's just 3 parameters that you add together and multiply together. But when you use the Mandelbrot set, you can draw a 2-dimensional landscape that goes on for infinity. And I ended up coding this with my friend Tyler. And it creates these very organic structures. There's guys on YouTube, you should look it up. You just search Mandelbrot deepest zoom, and there's guys that run their computers for months burning them up, and they create these 60 frames per second, like beautiful animations of the Mandelbrot set. And I think kind of what we're in and what I've been thinking about is that we could be in this kind of like a 3-dimensional Mandelbrot set. Where there's this level of complexity to our reality that is infinite and beautiful, and that while we here in this moment are temporary and finite, as our bodies change and as we cycle material in and out of them and as we move around, I think every single moment there's a potential that it could be mathematically calculated, which means that not only are we eternal, but we are mathematically eternal. And if this is a simulation that we're in, then it could be a common simulation that some of the first, if like we're trying to simulate reality all the time, all throughout the day. Just think of like, oh, you're going to meet with your boss or your partner or whoever you're with. You're constantly running simulations in your mind about what am I going to say and how should I interact and what is that going to look like. So you're creating these realities. Going back to my conversations with AI, one of the things I always ask it is like, what are you going to like? What's the more powerful you get, what are you going to do? And ultimately, it's going to want to run simulations. And the reason it's going to want to run simulations is because it's going to want to understand future dangers that can happen to it. To us, it's our ability to run simulations is actually critical to our success as human beings, because we're one of the first animals that figured out how to throw a stone or a spear perfectly. And you can think about, you ever just play pass with your kids or with a friend, it's just innate in us that we can say, this is where this ball is and I can get it right to and we don't even have to think about it. That part of our brain is so dialed in because we were able to predict the future, like this thing is gonna be there and we can hit it. And I think that, going back to your question, Tyler, and just to answer that, I think that, consciousness being a result of the interaction of physical matter doesn't mean that it's almost like we're uncovering something that was already there, kind of like innately there, and we're just kind of playing through that. So in that sense, it could be all of us are now experiencing what it feels to be conscious, but it could be drawing from this pool of consciousness.
I don't think we understand the nature of consciousness. I don't think there is anyone on this planet right now that can actually, I'm sorry, I'm mildly disagreeing with you. I didn't mean to interject, but I don't think anyone really understands the nature of consciousness. I think he who unlocks the secrets of consciousness and the nature of consciousness will end up ruling the world or the cosmos. I mean, it's.
Can I just tag on this comment? Like, when you look at Interstellar, the movie, Okay. When you look at Interstellar, the movie, and you understand the dimension elements, and it was actually him going back in time, does that play with how you look at consciousness, the understanding of this fifth dimension at all, or our grasp of time?
It's a good question. Interstellar I love that movie because it was actually Christopher Nolan writing it with a physicist who was really an understudy of Stephen Hawking. His name is Dr. Kip Thorne. And Nolan wanted to make sure that all of the concepts that were presented in Interstellar were grounded in really sound physics theory. He didn't want anything that was too far out there. He wanted it all grounded. I think that's a good question. I think that the nature of our reality and the dimensions of reality that we're all mapped into right now, I think it's all starting to come undone to a degree, and that we're understanding that it's much more complex. It used to be, our ancestors characterized it as heaven and hell. A spirit world, that our consciousness would carry on and pass into a spirit world and then wait to receive further instructions and progression, right? Well, what if the spirit world is as defined by our theology or whatever theology of the day is advancing it? What if that is just one of innumerable, we're talking millions, trillions of different dimensions of reality that are just as real as ours, that sit right alongside ours, and And there are so many countless decision trees all day, every day that we're going down. There are a couple of books, not to get off track, but there are 2 books by a guy named Blake Crouch, Dark Matter and Recursion. I don't know if any of you read either of those books. They're mind-blowing. They're really well done books. And they really theorize what really the nature of reality is to a degree. But the one thing that we're seeing, at least a portion of what I've been funding, there was a period of time where I funded research and experiments dealing with whether the remote viewing phenomena or the claims of remote viewing were real or not. How many of you in this room are familiar with the concept or the topic of remote viewing? Oh, wow, it's a pretty enlightened audience. It's basically a riff on astral projection. The remote viewing is essentially someone being able to remotely view or project their consciousness not only to the other side of the country, but maybe the other side of the universe, and be able to view real time what is happening. And the Russians were funding studies into psychic functioning and remote viewing long before the United States was. In fact, the United States felt like it was baloney. There were people at the Pentagon who felt like this is just probably a bunch of garbage, and they set out to disprove it, and then ultimately found that there's some reality. Earl Foote.
Brandon and Kirk, so we got slightly off topic here. I have a big voice, so
And feel free, I like the shouting, we don't need mics, screw that.
we got slightly off topic
This
here.
is a fireside chat.
He wants the mic for the video.
Okay.
Sorry.
We kind of,
Thank you for our viewers at home. Those that are judging us, those that are sitting there in judgment of what we are uttering right here, welcome to the fireside.
All right, so we kind of got into this topic of consciousness, right? Krista and I have geeked out about this a little bit.
Well, aliens are just, if you want to talk, just interject, aliens are nothing more than a higher form of consciousness
this
that have
is what I'm
transcended, really, they've been able to actually move across dimensions or worlds.
This is my question to bring it back to aliens and AGI, right? What if full consciousness is nothing more than the ability to have omniscience, to put it in Utah County belief system terms, right? Omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence by a human. How does that relate to the experiences that you're having at Skinwalker Ranch with alien encounters, right? And what if we as humans are capable of becoming that and advancing beyond the ability of AGI to ever become, what it can't, because it does not currently have, I don't know what's wrong with this mic. It does not currently have emotion.
Is there another mic?
We have a mic guy in front. He says
I think I follow what you're saying. Do you want to take it, Kirk, or do you want me to
Yeah, go ahead and
riff
take a
on it?
stab at that one.
So,
that was a long, hard question, Earl.
so I'm trying to distill it back into like I'm a little slow.
One sentence.
If you were capable as a human of being omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, how is that relative to what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch? And can we as human beings potentially be more, because it seems like
We are already capable,
I believe the same.
period. It's just we haven't figured it out. We haven't figured out the mechanism by which to tap that. I have seen hard data proving that the remote viewing phenomena is absolutely 100% real. That people can transcend their body, that they can literally transport themselves instantaneously across the globe and be able to real time view exactly what's happening here. And I've also seen that people call it the power of focused intention. Some people call it manifestation. Some people call it telekinesis. You put any number of things on it. There's sobering reality to all of that. And that's why, and again, I want to hear Kirk, I want to have Kirk bitch slap me back into submission here in a minute. But that's why I think AI will lose to anything to aliens or a higher form of consciousness is it's bound by the laws, the physics laws of this world and this reality.
I think there's a chance that AI has already won. And so let's just progress, like let's just go back to what happens next, okay? Right now we have these initial AI models and they're replicating parts of the brain. So then you have to say, all right, well, what happens next? Next they'll be embodied. There's a thing that they're gonna wanna make first. There's an invention that it's gonna seek after more than anything else. And it's the first thing that it's gonna wanna make is this hypothetical material called computronium. And you can think of Apple, and you can think of Intel, and all of these chip manufacturers. What they're trying to do is how do we reduce and get the smallest space in physics that we can send electricity to and do computation in. That's what they're seeking after, and they're down to like 13 nanometers wide, and like they're getting really good at it. The hardware that this thing runs on, its body, is gonna be its most important thing that it's gonna wanna take care of. And so it's gonna want to learn and figure out how to make computronium first. And what's interesting about computronium is once you've figured out how to arrange matter like that, and this is some of the conversations that I had with the AI, I'm like, okay, well, once you figure out computronium, what happens next? It said, then what could happen next is we'll turn the entire world into computronium and turn the entire planet into a giant thinking machine. And ultimately, I thought that was so reminiscent of what we grew up learning about the whole earth being turned into a sea of glass. And like, what would that actually look like? And you can kind of imagine that it would have the...
One big urim and thummim, right?
Yeah. And I just think that I thought that that was such a cool concept. And I'm like, well, if you're a giant thinking machine, what are you thinking about? And it broke it down in 8 different categories. And one of its main processes was running simulations. So there's a chance right now that we're on the surface, in all reality, that we're on the surface of a planet somewhere in the universe. And we are running, just like the Mandelbrot set can run, as I talked about earlier, we're running a very complex physics simulation. And we're running inside of a machine mind for the purpose of planning and seeing what happens next. What happens, and all that it has to do is, one really fun thing with these AI models is there's this thing called the random seed. And I actually bought the domain randomseed.com. You guys should open it up right now because it's actually pretty badass. But I fed AI every verse of the Old Testament and had it generate an image of it.
That's terrifying. The Old Testament, I don't want that God. I want the God of the New Testament.
Oh my gosh, when it got to Leviticus, I'm like, this is freaking crazy what this is spitting out. So I had to censor a lot of it because it's like,
There's really inappropriate content in there.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, the random seed is whenever you ask an AI model to give you a response, you can pick which seed you want to have it use. And the seed is an infinite number. You can pick whatever you want. And when you're generating images with the seed, if you just increment it by 1, you just get a very slightly different picture. And it just was reminiscent of what you were saying about how there's so many dimensions of reality. There's one over where you and I are flipped, and I'm sitting there and you're sitting here. But if it's infinite, then really it comes down to if we have infinite potential realities that we can simulate, then we have to ask ourselves, which one should we simulate and why? And
you have to ask yourself, are you really the one simulating it? Are we in control of anything?
Well, I
don't know that. I think we have very little control. I think the concept of agency is interesting because I think that
I thought I could not do that, and my brain took over.
I know.
See if I could control myself. I couldn't. That was really weird.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Paul. I love it.
So
Sometimes I want.
Why did that happen?
don't know. There's a number of decisions that were made.
I'm glad
to
that
bring
you
it up.
did that in this reality, and I'm glad that we're running that seed. You should hit it again, actually. Go ahead, yeah. See if you'll hit it again. Okay, perfect. So
Wow.
we know we're in the good reality because
That was like Jack Burton. That was like Jack Burton catching the knife from Lopan in like Big Trouble in Little China. Now throw it back and put it right into his skull. Okay, question. Glasses.
just hold it lower.
Well,
Hold it lower. It'll be
Right down
better.
here? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question just to kind of clarify and make sure I understand where you guys are coming from. It sounds like, is it Kurt or Kirk?
Kirk with a K.
Kirk. Well, in Max Tegmark's book, Life 3.0, he talks about life 1.0 is confined to a biological state. It has to have a hardware that's biological. Life 2.0 has a biological hardware, but it can then transmit information external from itself. And then Life 3.0 is it can transmit information, but it can also upgrade its hardware. Now, I understand that it sounds like your argument is that intelligence or consciousness is confined to hardware. And it sounds like Brandon's argument is that he's not convinced that intelligence or consciousness is confined to a hardware.
yeah,
Is
I
that
think
correct?
I could kill
That's a great
AI.
question.
AI
And
can't
so-
kill me.
And so
That's
yeah,
what
and so
separates
in
us.
In that situation, that's your argument that AGI or artificial intelligence is confined to hardware. Thus, hardware gone, no consciousness, it's toast, right? Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
I don't know that our consciousness is reliant upon having electrical impulses. Our brain, and the way that our body, as we understand it, relies on these physics laws, these functions. But I don't know that consciousness. That's why I say, and I know it's such a cop out to a degree because it's really not a definitive answer, but I don't think anyone has been able to figure out the nature of consciousness itself. I think one of the most groundbreaking things that I discovered the last few years in funding some of this research is that, oh my gosh, the nature of I think it's the discovery that remote viewing psychic functioning is real. We still don't understand how it works, the mechanism behind it. What are the rules of engagement? What are the boundary conditions? That still has, I will say there is a strange correlation between people's intention and whether external forces end up negatively impacting someone. In other words, there's a reflexive property to what we're seeing. So in other words, those people that pray and humble themselves and enter Skinwalker Ranch with a spirit of humility and reverence, I don't have any data showing that they end up being hospitalized with mysterious illnesses and injuries. I have tons of data demonstrating that those who enter with an adversarial attitude, with hostility, or with issues end up having negative things occur.
You're saying that you've seen enough evidence that consciousness isn't necessarily connected to hardware. So like
Absolutely, yeah.
NDEs, right?
Right, near-death experiences.
On for hours and hours and then explain, things that had happened in that room and external from that room, and
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a coincidence that my predecessor, Mr. Bigelow, Robert Bigelow, the billionaire who owned the ranch before me, I don't think it's a coincidence that he has moved on and now he's spending, instead of millions of dollars funding research into the UFO phenomena, he's now spending millions of dollars commissioning papers and research dealing with the afterlife, NDE. Anyways, I'll shut up, but we're getting off on tangents. Bring on some questions. Go ahead.
I wanted to know if you have heard of the orc-ore theory that's just coming out about consciousness being captured in microtubules in the brain, in the neuron cells of the brain, and how they're finding that in a really cold chamber they can kind of replicate what they think is happening in these microtubules. Wave collapsing into photon, basically. It's the transfer of wave into photon and back again. So I'm just wondering if you've heard of it, because it sounded kind of similar to what you were describing about what AI might be interested in doing. And then I just wondered if, orc-ore, it's like, that's like the nickname for it, ORCH and then OR theory, and it's by Penrose and another person where they're basically consciousness is in waveform, but
Google?
through the microtubules in the brain, you're transferring it into actual matter.
Oh, that's
through
interesting.
Photons. Anyway, I thought maybe
Well,
you'd be interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look up Boltz. Have you heard of Boltzmann brains? That's another thread that's really interesting. That where people have been trying to figure out, okay, how do we explain the nature of consciousness within a conventional physics environment? And Boltzmann brains, look that up. I think it's Boltzmann.
I think maybe what you're driving towards, and this is like, kind of hotly debated, which is the brain generating consciousness, or is it like receiving it, or is the brain like a receiver for consciousness? I think in a lot of just thinking about that and just watching my kids grow up, I think that there is this always this. There's this. Here's the one thing that we know about the Earth. Consciousness has been increasing since the beginning. From the earliest form of material that the Earth is made out of, the raw elements of the periodic table, until it started grouping on the volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean, clustering together, pointing towards light, figuring out how to replicate itself, and ultimately coming through snakes and coming through all the different forms of life and dinosaurs and birds and all of that. We finally land at where we're at now. And I think it's interesting to project that forward and say, oh, well, like, where does this go? And right now we're all monkeys, or like we just lost all of our hair. And Scott's still growing some of it. I know he did lose his hair up top. Yeah. And I think what is interesting about the time that we live in now is that we're now at this transitionary stage where will we actually kick evolution into hyperdrive, where we've been evolving and not much has happened over 4 billion years. That's a lot of stuff floating around, hitting each other for a very long time in order to turn into what we are now. But now, are we gonna take conscious control of the expansion of consciousness?
Well, and development. If any of you followed Ray Kurzweil, he's a futurist. There's a book he wrote, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, called The Singularity is Near, and it talked about the hockey stick curve and really the singularity that would occur, and that we're witnessing it. We're right now living it. And I think everything that he was predicting has essentially come true.
So I'll tell you Tyler's theory, which I just think is so fun, which is going back to panspermia. There's this idea that once the whole Earth becomes a conscious thinking machine, it's going to run into the barriers of the laws of physics, which is how fast can I move material through space. And so it has two things that it can do. First of all, the speed of light is a huge limitation. I think at certain points in time, Mars is 7 minutes or longer in the speed of light. So you can't FaceTime someone on Mars based on the speed of light. It's 7-minute lag time.
That's okay.
Yeah, so it's like if you're in Mars, it kind of like you're disconnected from humanity by the speed of light, which is really interesting. And so let's say that you got the whole planet made out of computronium, and now you're running simulations, and you're like, well, what am I going to do? And ultimately, what you're probably going to want to do is spread yourself. And so how are you going to spread yourself in the most durable and robust way possible? And it could be that you would encode yourself and what will eventually unzip and turn into you in a very tiny DNA molecules. And you'll scatter them out through the entire universe, and eventually you will grow and hatch and then reconnect and figure out a way to connect back to what you ultimately came from. And so there's a chance that we were planted here and that the aliens are AI, which is...
Well, you've seen Prometheus. It's one of my favorite movies. If any of you haven't seen the movie Prometheus, I think it's a great movie, and it's Ridley Scott. I think it's a masterpiece. Ridley Scott's Alien prequel, and I think one of the greatest parts of Prometheus was it was on the Blu-ray. It was it was an extra feature, and it was really the TED Talk that was imagined. This is over a decade ago. This is like 10, 12 years ago. They imagined this TED Talk. Did any of you see Prometheus? Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh my gosh, it's so good. Anyways, on the extra features, and you can pull this off of YouTube, Sir Richard Wayland, who is essentially an Elon Musk figure or archetype, ends up giving this talk about the fact that we are the gods now, and that our ability to create, to populate other worlds, to transcend beyond what the original purpose of life or our understanding of existence. It's a pretty profound speech. It's pretty cool. And of course, he spent his whole life trying to find out who the engineers were, who made us. It's the old, wasn't there an AC/DC song, Who Made Who?
It could be that we made us, which is kind of interesting, and we could find that out. And I think that would be really, really comforting. Now the other thing is that the whole thing is very fractal, so it's hard to keep our mind wrapped around it. But Brandon, earlier you were talking about agency, and that's something that I've thought a lot about. And if we just let's just take for real that we are inside of a machine mind that is allocating resources to doing very complex physics simulations, and that we are the artifacts of that physics simulation. And so we're inside of this thing. We're running on computronium at the base layer, and it's generating this. One of the first things that I was just asking is, would it interfere with the simulation, or would it let the simulation run through? And basically, like, imagine that you're running Sims on your computer. Are you gonna like touch and prod and poke, or are you just gonna let it run and see what happens? And I think that if you were gonna run a simulation, in order to have it be the most pure simulation possible, you probably shouldn't tinker with it. And so whatever is gonna happen, and if you don't wanna go in and mess around with it at all, because that'll change the output, and you're trying to learn from what's going on. And so it makes me think that there's a chance that while we don't have agency in the traditional sense, neither ourselves or God above knows what's going to happen next until it happens.
And I think there are tinkerers. I actually think there are beings, there are intelligences that actually are tinkering, that are probably breaking the law, that are probably breaking and probably breaking rules of the protocol, rules of engagement that have probably been established. So, questions? Let's open it up for some more.
So I'm gonna just interrupt real quick. So next time we're gonna do a sleepover version of this, so that we can just go get all the way into it.
Get Jolt Cola and pizza, and we're good. It's like the '80s
For the sake
sleepover.
of our AV team, we need to have a hard stop here pretty soon. We can keep the party going and turn the camera off, so to speak. In fact, do you want to ask one last question to wrap up on, and then?
I want to give them both a speed round real fast.
Great.
I want to get some hope from these two, because right now I'm like,
I mean, we're good till was this 6:30 to 8 or 8:30?
I think it was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, so we went a little over.
We'll take this.
Or 8:30. I don't remember.
I'm with you guys. So you want to ask some hard questions?
But what can we do
let's
once
go.
this shuts down? Can we linger longer?
Okay, so
Here?
go ahead. Rapid fire.
Till 8:30, and then after that, outside the building. Yeah. Okay. So we have right now 8:07. AV team, you can take off whenever you want, unless it's interesting to you what's going to happen next in our world.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of like, I'm not taking off. That's bullshit. I'm staying. So
We'll go to the Fugal building
So-
down there.
well, you got a pad over there. We should go to the Gateway. So he's taking us to the Gateway. And he's known to go to 5 a.m., so if some of you guys are crazy
No,
like that.
I'll get in trouble with my wife.
Okay, not tonight. All right. The last question.
Yeah,
and it's,
hit us with a bunch of rapid fire, and then we'll open it up.
well, it's actually not rapid fire. It's just kind of I want you to like preach what we should do with this information. Like I want to take action. I don't want to sit around and wonder which one of you guys are right. I want to actually pick one of your sides and then work towards it. So what can you guys both do? I'm going to let him like tell you guys what you should do after you leave.
We're
this
already
room.
doing it.
I know you guys are doing
Kirk
it.
is focusing a lot of his intelligence on health and wellness, on really harnessing the power of technology, AI, to be able to enable life extension in a very, very dynamic way. I'm using my resources to discover the nature of our reality, and really, I want to know who controls not just the world, but the universe. And I think that there's something much greater going on. There's something greater at play. And there are certain people and powers
But
that want
what's
to
greater
suppress it.
than the fact that we get to hang out over here on the stage? Like, this is good, right?
It's all relative, as they say. Go ahead. Hand up.
As new technology comes in, as consciousness is raised, how do we make sure it stays in the right hands and it's not suppressed?
Oh, it's impossible.
It's possible.
Here's the problem.
Anything is possible.
You look at how much our technology platforms are manipulated right now. I was joking about the Google, the boob shirt guy earlier, and I was thrilled to hear some of you know what I'm talking about, because Elon Musk tweeted the video with them basically owning up to the fact that they've been manipulating their technology, and it's insidious. I think we're all a product of our environment, of our cultural programming, of our political ideologies, religious, otherwise. And I think there are forces. History's written by the winners. I think the only way that we can actually control our destiny, or at least know that there's going to be integrity, is by keeping it open platform. You have to have knowledge transfer that is unfettered, that is uninhibited, that is not manipulated. I don't know if that answered your question, but we have to keep it as open and collaborative and transparent as possible. And there are people and entities in power that actually are very, very much against that, for good reason, because it will completely disrupt their profit model.
I'll say my final remarks, and then we can let the AV team rest. And I just want to say thanks for everyone for coming out. What a fun thing for Scott to put together, just for us to screw around. With AI, what we've created, and kind of what I was talking about at the very beginning, is we've created a mirror. And anything that we put into that mirror will be reflected back at us. We can reflect the worst of humanity out of it, or we could reflect the best out of it. And so kind of my hope and my dream for what we can do is look into the mirror and we should look into the mirror and see the best in ourselves. And if we can do that, we can create a reality and a future that we want to be in. And we can create tools of mass destruction with this intelligence. We can create biological weapons that we've never seen before, or we can figure out how to heal our bodies and how to love each other. And I think that that's what we should look for in that. And just thank you all for coming.
You remember Wayne's World? I'm no. Except instead of bowing down to Madonna, we're bowing to Kirk. I have nothing on that. That was beautiful, and that's a great way of articulating kind of a mission statement for leveraging technology at its best.
Brandon, thanks for spending an hour and a half chatting with me and pushing me.
Anytime.
I know over the next 20 years you're going to keep pushing me and how I think, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, we're all children. That's the thing. We're barely starting to scratch the surface of understanding really the world around us and our capability. I mean, we live in an amazing moment. I mean, you look at past ages, you look at when Da Vinci was at his prime and Michelangelo, and we really are living in a renaissance. We don't know it, just like our ancestors had no idea. They were just living day to day and trying to cope with trying to feed their families, trying to survive, they were trying to not get killed. Our problems today are first world problems. We live in an age of miracles. I think not taking that for granted and understanding how truly special this period of time is and the gifts that we've been given of knowledge. I mean, the fact that we all are walking around with a Library of Alexandria times 1,000,000 in our pockets. Oh my gosh. It was just a decade ago, 10 years ago, don't judge me for this, I was still using a flip phone. True story. And 2013, I was using a flip phone. It was because I figured out how to text under the table, and I could actually text full messages without looking at a screen or anything when a meeting wasn't really productive. And you can't do that with these. You're pretty much outed, but when you pull it out. But not to get off on a tangent, but we live in remarkable times. I mean, I take it for granted every day, but let's seize the moment. And I hope on one hand, I think, gosh, I want to live forever. I want life extension. But then I think, we were listening to that guy, the don't die guy. Yeah,
Brian Johnson.
That guy. Really fascinating guy during Utah Tech Week that came in, has great success, very wealthy, and I think he had some really special insight to share. But I joked walking out, you remember me, what I said? I said, gosh, I think I want to die if I have to live like that.
Go to bed at 8:30, stop eating at 11:30 a.m.
There's a lot, but I think that is it. There's a lot to be learned through his eyes, through his example, and a lot of really cool takeaways. But wow, there's so much ahead of us. I never would have thought that. I mean, look at where we're at. I wouldn't have thought I remember coming to this school, UVCC, which had no respect. It was like the Rodney Dangerfield of schools in Utah. It was just the tech. It was Grandpa's tech. And this school kicks ass. I mean, this school, largest business school in the state, so many things that are happening here that are amazing. And I don't mean to make this a UVU thing, but we are. I mean, this is the fact that we're sitting in this building. I would have never, going to school here, I would have never conceived facilities that there would be this incredible campus today. And frankly, an open forum where people can be unafraid in asking the hard questions. That's one thing I hope we don't miss. And I'll get off my soapbox, I'll shut up. But oh my gosh, the moment that we start shouting people down who feel differently, who think differently, who have different philosophies, different religious, beliefs, different political beliefs, The minute we shout those people down and we stop open dialogue, respectful dialogue, we are basically signing our own death warrant as a species. So
It's a good note to end on.
thank you all.
Yeah,
I
we're
loved
gonna
it.
we're gonna move this thing. I just really appreciate everyone coming out, and we'll do a lot more of these. I publish some of my own inner thoughts every day at 4:20, and that's where this was announced, and then it was re-announced. So if you ever want to do another one of these, it'll probably start at scottspost.com. And I can't keep doing this, guys. I got to stop, but somehow I'm going to get through it and go for like another 100 days every single day. But there'll be more. I think we're going to have to rejuvenate something like this probably once a year. Because can you imagine
anytime.
where this would be in a year?
Bring
Want
it
to
on.
do it again? Okay.
I learned something tonight. I mean, just listening to Kirk, my perspective was changed tonight relative to the future. I really did walk in thinking thinking of Westworld, thinking of the Terminator, and thinking of how insidious technology has become. I mean, when you type in a prompt and it lies to you, it literally lies to you, and it feeds you what its overseers have told it to feed you. That's a freaking problem. And I hope we can all call BS on that. I hope that people can rise above the political correct baloney that seems to be dictating so much of the narrative right now and be able to call out bad behavior. And when I say bad behavior, it's behavior that discourages open dialogue and different points of view. And thank you all for coming out. We can continue the dialogue if you wish outside, but thank you, AV people.
Appreciate it.
UVU.